So getting into volume 4 of Overlord, this volume I've always thought was funny for a couple of reasons. One, because apparently a lot of people hate this volume. And I don't really understand why, because I personally enjoy it. I guess I do understand, but I just don't really get the mindset behind it, because a lot of people say, oh, well, it's meant to be focused on Ainz, this is just filler, and to me, I'm just like, it's called Overlord. And the same thing happened when season 2 came out, and of course this particular arc came up. A lot of people are like, oh, but the story's meant to be focused on Ainz. It's like, no, it's called Overlord. It's meant to build up the world, and I think it'd feel shallow if it just only focused on Ainz and ignored everyone else. Feel like a video game or something where as soon as Ainz leaves X zone, that zone just freezes in place in time and nothing ever transpires afterwards. It's nice to see other things going on around the world, and how Nazarick has had a rippling effect, and other characters, particularly the Floor Guardians, and how they also interact with the world. And that's one of the reasons why I do really enjoy this volume, because it's about Cocytus, which is a character that doesn't get heaps of attention. It's kind of like almost like a side character in a sense. But Cocytus gets a fair bit of attention in this particular volume because it's very much focused on the idea of self-thinking, like critical thinking, not relying on orders. If Ainz says, okay, defeat this opponent for me, here's an army, it is up to Cocytus to evaluate and work out the best path for defeating it. But at the same time, if, of course, Cocytus doesn't have the necessary resources available, then Cocytus needs to do something about it, like going back to Ainz and saying, hey, I need more troops, I need more of this, I need more of that, because I just don't have what's needed to defeat the opponent. And being able to do that, rather than just being like, well, Ainz gave me these soldiers, clearly this should be enough. Well, no, the whole point of the test, Cocytus, was to make you aware that, you know, not everything is always going to go to plan. And that is something that I really do enjoy about this volume. But it also establishes the lizard people and some of the stuff that's going on around the world, the politics, the strings being pulled. And I just really enjoy when there's world building going on. And especially when it's some pretty fun stuff. Especially some of the stuff that happens in this volume. Just particularly the whole mating thing with the lizard people is just kind of funny. That's all. And the anime did a really good job at that as well. And then also, some of that was also on Shalltear as well, and the repercussions from volume 3 onto volume 4, and the inevitable fight and then defeat, and then of course Shalltear feeling like she's failed, she's kind of moping around, there's a lot of like pouting going on, and that sense that she needs a punishment, but the punishment really wasn't quite what was in mind. You know, Ainz is thinking, you know, I'll use you as a seat and that will work, that's your punishment, not realizing that Shalltear is quite a handful, which is quite erotic, which just adds to the comedic value. I think the real big focus though is again the whole world building, the cogwheels that are constantly moving on around different pieces of the puzzle, and then of course Cocytus learning an extremely valuable lesson. But at the same time, Cocytus does try to rely on Demiurge, because Demiurge is basically trying to tell him, hey, you're meant to be critically thinking here, that maybe you weren't meant to win this, that you were meant to go back to Ainz and say, hey, I need more troops, or I need more of this or that, etc. But he was very quickly interrupted by someone else watching and observing. So it clearly shows that Demiurge worked it out pretty quickly, but Cocytus is just one of those that it's kind of like, if you told Cocytus to go from point A to point B and there was a tree in the path, he would just stop in front of the tree, be puzzled and be like, I can't get there, so I'll just try and like somehow go over the tree. Like it just kind of like a system error for Cocytus, and he just kind of like shuts down. But in this case, you're just meant to just go around it or navigate around it, or in this case, you could cut down the tree, but in a better way, you would just go around the tree. So it's a simple analogy. It's not the best analogy, because overall the best analogy is kind of looking at the story itself and going, hey, you've been given a set amount of troops, you failed, you should have probably evaluated before going in there. I think one of the big issues is he even admits it, that he kind of just went in gung-ho, and I feel like kind of a bit of an assumption that it was going to be a cakewalk. And I think that's another issue as well, this whole mindset that Nazarick is unstoppable and cannot be defeated no matter what. It's kind of like that silly mindset, but at the same time, Cocytus could have used other avenues, like scout it out, work things out, use tactics, etc. But of course, Cocytus kind of just threw everything in a kind of like waves, and it kind of all just backfired. Which then, of course, leads to Ainz making the decision, thanks to Demiurge, being like, alright, well, you've got to go out there and defeat them on your own. And that is where the lizard people decide to, of course, serve Nazarick, which also does help the lizard people, because there's this issue that their tribes were getting too big and food scarcity, and that they'd have to fight each other, and that there was some I can't even pronounce it, but other lizard people eating other lizard people because of the starvation going on and the lack of resources. So inevitably, this issue was going to come up, and there was going to be infighting, but because of Nazarick, that basically culled some of the numbers down. But reality is that, I mean, if the lizard people grow too quickly, they might run into that problem again. But the fact that they are allied with the lizard people, or the lizard people are allied with Nazarick, Nazarick could always assist them and teach them things about agriculture. And the other thing to also note was the whole fish farm that the individual had, which was the adventurer guy from that whole lizard group. So I just think there's some really fun and interesting little things from this volume, but it's not like it's a groundbreaking volume that's like got like heaps of things going on. I feel like it's got some major focus points, but then of course you've got other little things like other cogwheels with other political parties in the shadows, dealing with the whole stuff going on from volume 1 and then also volume 3, particularly volume 3 with the big focus of Shao-Ti and her having to recuperate. I love Shao-Ti. She's one of my favorite characters just because of the layers to her character and the development, that the potential development is just so infinite with her because of the volume 3 and the failings from that, and how it has a rippling effect, and how that does lead into all these emotions that she's now going through because of the failings and the potential of where that will go, without of course spoiling, because of course I've read beyond that. But the potential of where that can go is just really awesome, and I like that sort of the beginning stage of where that's going to go for her, because clearly there's going to be some growth. Of course, adding into the fun, part where her being used as a seat is just extra flavor to it all. So the last thing to also note is, of course, the sort of dummy Nazarick that they were building. That's very much minor stuff. It's not really anything really major noteworthy, other than just Albedo kind of trashing it because she got upset about the chair situation. But that's about it. So I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What were your favorite parts out of this particular volume? For me, it's just, again, that major learning curve for Cocytus, because he doesn't always get heaps of time to shine. So, again, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I'll see you beautiful nerds in the next video.